We will call to order the September 28th meeting of the Peters Township Council. Roll call, Mr. Lauer.
Mrs. Merrick.
Present.
Here. Mr. Ball.
Present.
Mr.
Here.
Mr. Poser. Here. Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Approval of the minutes. The first minutes to be approved are the transcript of the public hearing held on July 27th.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of the minutes of the council meeting held on September 14th.
Motion approved.
Second.
Discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Special reports, I see none. Audience comments. We have one letter.
Yes. If I can, I will read this letter to an audience calling for Peters Township Council members. My name is Carol Lee Ketelar. I live at 103 Bethany Drive here in Peters Township. My comment today pertains to stolen and vandalized Biden-Harris signs. I'm a Washington County Democratic Committee woman and hear almost every day from fellow Democrats about stolen or vandalized Biden-Harris signs. There was a gentleman who told me about a Biden yard sign on Will Scarlet Road that had been pulled out of the ground and smeared with mud. There is my neighbor on Williams Avenue who told me her Biden sign had been stolen, and two families on Candlelight Drive who had their Biden sign stolen. And there was a 4x4 Biden-Harris sign at the intersection of Valley Brook and Bebo, which was vandalized repeatedly. I've attached a photo of the sign after one incident. It looks like someone took a baseball bat to it. When people tell me about their stolen, vandalized Biden signs, I always tell them to call the police and file a report. I don't know how many people actually do this, but the situation has gotten so bad that I'm calling on you and elected representative for all Peters Township residents to issue a public statement condemning all acts of stealing and vandalism of political signs. Since there are so many more Republican than Democrats in the township, it seems appropriate for you to further condemn acts of stealing and vandalism of Biden signs and signs of other Democratic candidates, which is typically impossible to know who is stealing and vandalizing signs for Democratic candidates. I think it's reasonable to assume it's not being done by Democrats. I'm aware that the Peters Township Police Department posted an article on their Facebook page about the Pennsylvania State Police issuing a reminder that stealing political signs is a crime, and I appreciate that reminder, but a statement from council will more reach than a Facebook post, and will also show the community leadership on your part, the Democratic Party, from the National Party of the Washington County Democratic Committee to the Peters Township Democratic Committee, has communicated very clearly and forcefully to all of our members they are not to steal or vandalize Republican signs. We are doing what we can to get the message across. Please do what you can by issuing a statement condemning the stealing and signing and vandalizing of signs.
I would only comment that, the Biden signs are not alone in being stolen and vandalized. We've probably lost several hundred Republican signs in the same period of time, at least several hundred. There was a large Trump sign at the end of Valley Brook Road that was vandalized in a similar manner. We had a witness to that one, an adult female, slashing the sign, who I doubt was a Republican. So, it's not a one-sided thing. We would be very happy to join the Democratic Party in condemning this. It's certainly childish at best. I would really hope that everybody would refrain from doing this. It's stupid. It's silly. Sophomoric. And if we can cut it out, that would be very nice. So we'll just get on with it. Okay?
Well, what's the best way for us to put out a statement?
I think that the best we can do is to put it up on our website. We can do an email blast on this. But, my experience is that the nature of the people who would do this kind of thing aren't going to pay attention to that kind of warning anyhow. I will tell you, and I think Ed would confirm this, this political season, we are having more calls about signs and than we have had ever, and a lot of it has to do with vandalism of signs and placement of signs. So.
Okay.
All righty, and this is not unique to just Peters Township, trust me. All righty.
I don't know whether there's any other audience.
Any other audience comments? Anybody in the audience want to actually make an audience comment? Okay. Unfinished business, there is none. New business, appointment of member to the Peters Township Youth Commission. We have interviewed 3 people this evening. Accept a recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, I'll nominate James Kokosinski for the Youth Commission.
Any discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain. I was not present.
5-0 then. All right, thank you.
I
Congratulations.
would like for the record to state that every candidate we interviewed tonight was worthy of this position. And again, this is always a very difficult decision for us to make because we have outstanding people that come before us that want these positions. And we thank them for their effort.
They are, and I hope that as positions are posted in the future, that we continue to get, the great residents of this township. It's what does make it a great township, but it's also a difficult decision. Statement of the minimum municipal obligation for employee pensions.
So in September of each year, the township is responsible for calculating the township's minimum financial obligations to fund its pensions in the upcoming year. The method and manner of that calculation are prescribed by state law. Council's obligation is to simply acknowledge that they're in receipt of that statement.
So we acknowledge
document
receipt of the 2021 statement of the minimum municipal pension obligation.
Second. Oh,
Doesn't matter.
In favor?
Third.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Didn't
You
mean
are-
to interrupt you there, Mr. Lowry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I jumped the
That's
gun on
okay.
you a little.
You are stated. Authorize appropriate township officials to execute a cooperation agreement with the Washington County Redevelopment Authority for the purpose of accepting a $160,000 grant designated to partially offset the cost of constructing the Rolling Hills Park Trail Connector.
This is a grant that the township received under the local share account program last year. That grant needs to have approval from DCED. That has now occurred. The county is in a position to enter into an agreement with us for.
Is it a matching grant?
Yes, it is. But that's okay because this is for Rolling Hills Park, and that $160,000 will more than match that. This is the trail connector from the Bottom Hill up.
So I'll make a motion that the appropriate township officials execute a cooperation agreement with the Washington County Redevelopment Authority for the purpose of accepting a $160,000 grant designed to partially offset the cost of constructing the Rolling Hills Park Trail Connector.
Second.
Any other discussion?
I did have one question. There was a reference to a timeline. It had to be completed within a certain period. Are we comfortable
That won't
about
be a
that?
problem. In fact, one of the things that, kind of as an aside, this week we're going to be going out for bid for the phase 1 of Rolling Hills Park, which includes this connector, but is also the loop road. So
Good. Thank you.
that won't be a problem.
Okay, in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, authorize appropriate township officials to execute a sponsoring agency agreement with the Southwestern Emergency Response Group for the purpose of extending workers' compensation and heart and lung benefits to participating Peters Township firefighters.
So Peters Township has, for a period of time, participated in the Southwestern Pennsylvania Emergency Response Group, and in particular, we have firefighters trained through that group to do urban search and rescue. So when our firefighters go out, they remain employees of Peters Township. And the concern from the emergency response group is that there be a clear indication that their workers' comp and their coverage under heart and lung continue with them. There's no question about that, and all this does is create an agreement that stipulates that. So,
I'll make a motion that the appropriate township officials execute a sponsoring agency agreement with the Southwestern Emergency Response Group for the purpose of extending workers' compensation and heart-lung benefits to participating Peters Township firefighters.
Second.
Any other discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval for recording purposes of the Arlecchino Subdivision Plan No. 1 as shown on drawings prepared by Keystone Surveying and Mapping dated May 28, 2020 for the Thomas A. Robinson Family Limited Partnership and Francis de Blasio.
So our computer is frozen. So this is the Arlecchino restaurant wants to expand its restaurant, and to do so, what they're proposing is the Thomas Robinson Family Trust, which owns the land in which the restaurant sits, is to combine properties as well as to swap properties. So if you were to look at the tax map right now, this would show you exactly what the current situation is in terms of who owns what properties. The intent is to combine properties and swap them. So what you'll end up with is two parcels of land that look like this. So it's my recommendation that the council approve this subdivision, that's known as the Arlecchino Subdivision Plan No. 1.
I'll move we approve.
Other discussion?
Yes, I had a couple of questions. Do the de Blasios currently have an written easement agreement with Arlecchino or Robinson to drive through the property? Because it seems like they're landlocked without an easement.
Yes.
Okay. When we redo subdivisions like that, is there some reason why we don't encourage people to try to make a driveway or figure out a division of property so that there doesn't have to be an easement that follows the property?
In this case, topography prevents the driveway from going anywhere.
I did drive over there, and I could see that it would be difficult. I'm just kind of asking, so that was a consideration, but it's not possible in this case. Okay.
And is my understanding that the planning commission conditions, they've all been completed?
Anything else? All right. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Authorize the appropriate township officials to execute a co-applicant agreement for highway occupancy permit for storm sewer crossing along Thomas Road for the Lutz plan, for the Lutz farm plan.
This agenda item and the next agenda item both refer to the Lutz farm preliminary plan. This gives you a general idea of where that's located on Thomas Road. As part of the plan, they will need to connect their storm sewers back into the state storm sewer system. They cannot do that on their own. It takes a joint application with the township applying to be able to make that connection. And the reason for that is that the state of Pennsylvania wants to make sure that the municipality is prepared to take over ownership of those storm sewers. So as part of all of these plans, that interior storm sewer system is something that we will eventually take over. We have been doing this now on the last couple plans that have come in with storm sewer systems tied into the state system. Most recently, I think the Westbury plan required the same kind of agreement. You're going to see more of these every time a property develops, but it's my recommendation that the council authorize the appropriate township officials to enter into a storm sewer maintenance agreement, and the appropriate officials be authorized to sign and submit a highway occupancy permit.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, just please clarify who the agreement is, because this says environmentally sound enterprises. on your
You know what,
recommendation?
this is a mistake on my part.
Okay, so it's with
Yes, it's
Mr.
with-
Taylor.
Right.
So who's ultimately going to be responsible for the storm system?
As long as before it gets dedicated to the township, the developer will be responsible for the storm sewer system. As soon as it gets dedicated to the township, when we accept the roads, it becomes ours, and that's standard in all of our plans.
Do we do any type of inspection, like while they're installing this? Do we have people there looking to make sure that because once it's buried,
Well, actually, it's inspected as it goes in, but then it is video camera before we accept it, and any deficiencies have to be corrected.
okay, thank you.
Other questions? In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 601. Approval of a Lutz Farm preliminary plan as shown in the drawings proposed by Tabon Engineering, dated July 21.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to have Ed, maybe Ed, you can speak from the podium, talk to you about this plan.
Mr. Taylor and his engineers here tonight, so I'll be brief. This is the preliminary plan for the Lutz Farm plan of lots. It's preliminary plan. The final plan will come back to Planning Commission and Council as well. It's 26 acres. Ted Taylor owns it, formerly the Lutz Farm. It's zoned low-density residential, but it's in our conservation residential overlay. They chose to use the conservation residential overlay zoning. They are 1.5 lots here, so 40 lots on 26 acres is 1.5 density, and so they are required to set aside at least 25% of that land as open space, so they're setting aside 6.3 acres as open space. Mr. Taylor has agreed to create a homeowners association in this plan. I think this will be the first plan he's developed in Peters with a HOA. So all the open space will be dedicated to the HOA. There's stormwater management on the western side of the development, on the left side. That'll be dedicated to Peters Township. We want to own those stormwater management facilities. These lots range in size from a quarter acre up to almost an acre. There's some big lots at the end of the cul-de-sacs. There's a big flag lot there that's 4 acres. He has to bring sanitary sewers from down Thomas Road toward where the Chapel Farms plan of lots is, close to Simmons Road. So he has to obtain easements from all those property owners to extend the sewers up. This will be served by the Peters Township Sanitary Authority. There's no tap restrictions here. Planning Commission looked at this on July 9th, 2020, and recommended the preliminary plan be approved by council. There are some conditions there that they still have to meet. That is a quick summary of this Lutz Farm preliminary plan. 40 total lots. Houses will be in the 500,000 and up range.
Ed, is there, I mean, you know, obviously Thomas Road's they speed on that road, just like they do in every township road. But would it not be better if the two egresses onto Thomas Road were like a T? You know, that they connected?
I'll let the township...
Because, it just seems now we're going to have cars making lefts and rights on a very busy, fast-moving road.
Site distance was a problem there to tee it up, so it's...
Site distance is a problem?
Site distance to tee it
Well,
up.
then it's going to be a problem for people getting in and out where they are.
But they have good site distance where they are in most places.
That makes no sense to me.
No, we did look at the site distance, and those were the two options, the two locations where it worked. There is also a stream. If we teed up the intersections, there's a stream on the opposite side of the road that would have to get permitted, and we were trying to avoid impacts to natural resources to the greatest extent possible. They're 250 feet apart, which is in accordance with the ordinance.
To Mr. Berquist's point, though, that's a very busy road, and I'm presuming that some of these houses will be sold to families with children. So is there going to be a bus going in the plan, or are they going to be stopping on Thomas Road to pick up the children?
Thomas Road.
So That's concerning to me. Is there any way that they could widen the entrance? Because either people will be parking there or children will be standing there. I mean, I think that's concerning.
There's sidewalks to get folks walking to those bus stops. And at least for now, the bus will not go in because there's nowhere for that bus to go. But eventually, that road on the lower side is a temporary cul-de-sac that will lead up into the Just About Road, Simmons Farm, Gerhold Farm area. So eventually, a bus may go through there.
But a bus will never do here.
No, inside.
And my concern about it, when I look at it, the lower cul-de-sac, which you say it's a temporary one, it doesn't connect to Gerhold's property. So because the way...
Well, I think there's a property in between there.
Right, it goes to...
Actually, it gets to Gerhold and Simmons.
Right, except that it goes to Ambrogi's property, which as I recall is around 10 or 12 acres. But what this plan does is Gerhold's property, which is like 150 acres, it essentially landlocks it. And what I can't understand is almost the entire rear of that side of the Lutz property borders on the Gerhold property. But we turn the road to get over to the Ambrogi property. As I recall, the topography you're going to have to take the road in and then back out. So if Gerhold's property were to get sold and someone wants to develop Gerhold's property, they can't get to this road now the way it's oriented, because you would have to go through Ambrogi's property in order to get to it, right?
True, and I gotta see here. I can look at that, but topography, Caleb, this was the best place to leave that temporary cul-de-sac topographically to get it further up the hill.
Correct.
So are you saying that there will be a temporary cul-de-sac at the bottom of that drawing?
There is, yes.
Okay, so there is going to be one otherwise.
Correct.
It's shown on the preliminary plan set.
See, I just don't want to be in a situation 10 years from now when someone's developing the Gerhold property and they want to bring a road down, and we're going to have to, if Ambrogi doesn't, or whoever owns the Ambrogi property at that point doesn't want to play ball, we're going to have another man or way situation, because you're going to have to condemn a piece of that property to get through there. It's like it's so close looking at the plan. It looks like it's like 25 feet away, but you're taking the road the opposite direction.
We can look at that to make sure the intent of that temporary cul-de-sac is to ultimately lead up into the Gerhold, Just About Road, Simmons Farm area to create another access point to Thomas Road. That's the purpose of that cul-de-sac.
But the problem is you got another piece of property in between.
But I don't think there's any way topographically to get it right to Gerhold. And we'll look at that.
And if we are going to look at that, then I'm going to suggest to you, you need to table the consideration of this until we have a chance to do that, as opposed to approve a plan that shows that connection in that way.
Can you clarify where the extra parking is? Because one of the things that I know we don't allow parking on the streets at night, but with the streets the width that they are, there were to be additional parking, and I can't quite discern. Right. Would you mind?
Yeah. We provided, there's 4 spaces here on this side of the road. There's an ADA space, there's another 2 spaces, and there's 4 spaces on this cul-de-sac.
So there are spaces on the cul-de-sac. That was the other thing. So is the cul-de-sac larger, Ed, to accommodate for parking in the cul-de-sac?
Yes.
Because we don't ever usually allow that.
Correct. The cul-de-sac is 80-foot diameter, and it goes into beyond.
Right.
Parking is above and beyond the 80-foot.
Yeah, it's outside of the normal width of the cul-de-sac.
And do you have parking on Hunter's Crossing, the lower section we were just talking about?
We do not.
Okay, so when those parents drive their kids up to the entrance, they'll be parking on the street?
There's 2 spaces at the cluster mailbox units,
Okay.
which are located at that end.
And one other question, do we have traffic calming in here at all, or are we bypassing that?
You don't have any straight roads.
Do we have the capability of doing traffic calming on that road, on Thomas, because it's a state road? Does that preclude us?
Correct.
I believe the traffic calming ordinance calls for it every 600 feet, though, correct?
It does.
Our road lengths to each cul-de-sac is 600 feet.
Okay.
And it's
and then it's 500 feet on the
Yes, I
side.
think the curved nature of that
And then
road.
I believe the curves also comply with traffic calming.
And one last question. We recently approved a sign ordinance about monument signs. Will
Okay.
there be a monument on each side of the road to identify the
Yeah, we do have it called out
development?
on each side.
And is there going to be lighting there at the entrance to the development?
Yep, there'll be lighting at the monument sign.
That was a question that came up because of a situation on Bebot Road
Okay.
with a new plan that's just been developed.
Is there a street light provided for there?
There is not right now. They're going to illuminate the entrance, so I think we'll be okay. We can look at that, and that could be a final air conditioner.
Well, where are we leaving this connector?
We table this until we get some feedback about the issue that was raised concerning the
Hunter's
connection to-
Crossing.
What's the name of that farm?
Gerhold?
Gerhold.
Hunter's Crossing to Gerald.
Right.
Second.
I'd like to also, when you look at it, see some ideas about where school buses are going to pick up kids there. Mrs. Merrill makes a good point that, school buses are going to be stopping
On both sides.
on both sides down there. I'm like, that's an awful busy road to be stopping on. It's just even a space for kids to hang out till the buses.
I still don't understand how it's a sight distance issue. I mean, it would seem to me that the road on the lower side, as I recall, that property, it's just a consistent valley going all the way across, so I don't see.
It's not consistent enough. There's actually a hump in the road about here because it flattens out.
Right.
So the peak's here, comes down, and it flattens out through here. So there's a hump over here that actually it makes it an issue looking back to the left. So distance-wise, you have to get back far enough so that is no longer an issue. It's not an issue on this side, but it's an issue on this
So
side.
the issue's on the lower side then? Okay,
Yeah,
all
looking
right.
back that way.
Wait, what about,
Well, what is the speed limit on Thomas in that area? Because it changes, it turns 25 down around, what, Simmons?
Yeah, I think it's 35 in this area.
You might want to go to PennDOT too and see if they'd lower the speed limit in that area.
So you indicate.
Not that it would help at all.
so wait, is the sight distance only an issue on the lower side?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
Recommend.
No, sight distance was an issue on both sides.
Okay, all right.
No, we definitely were playing around trying to come up with locations where.
Yeah, I can say, I drive that road a lot. It just
Yeah.
doesn't seem like there's a hump there, but I'll notice it more now that you mentioned it.
Yeah,
when I drive
it's
home.
not a hump, it's just that it flattens out. And then that flattening out actually is what causes the
Yeah.
issue.
Okay.
It just seems like it's such a recipe for disaster. And not now, but if once the Gerald property is developed and you got 200 or 300 units up there, everyone's going to be coming down that way, and you're going to have two roads within 250 feet of each other.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I mean, if that's how it has to happen, that's how it has to happen. But it just seems like it's.
It'd be a lot neater if it was across, yeah.
Yeah, it would be. Or if we could do traffic calming, which we can't do.
Well, PennDOT.
Well, which we can.
We had a motion to table.
I seconded.
Did you say that? Okay. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thanks.
Try to do it quick so that
It'll be back
this
to
is
the
the
next.
best we can do.
It'll be back at the next meeting.
Okay.
I don't want to jam up
I
this.
don't know. I'd still prefer a T, but I can see why there's an issue.
Yeah.
We're going to get, we will have, Mr. Mundry has looked at this already, and we'll get him to confirm that that's not
Yeah,
possible.
thanks.
Said there was a request to table the Center Presbyterian.
Yes, both items I and J, the church has asked us to table those.
You mean H, what about H?
H and I, you mean?
H&I.
Yeah.
Wait, the table
Yeah,
line?
excuse me, yeah.
H and I. Do we need a motion?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we table H and I in the agenda, which is a request by Center Presbyterian Church for departure for regulations and the approval for recording purposes of the subdivision plan number 1.
Second?
Second.
Was there a reason? They just,
We were looking at this again today in preparation for the meeting. I think the church has disadvantaged themselves, and we want to give them an opportunity to perhaps make a change to the plan.
Okay, in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Change order number 1 related to the fabrication of a truck body by Stephenson Equipment.
Yeah, Mr. Herson talked to council about this on last Monday. There was originally $130,000 appropriated for the truck. We had placed the order at $112,000. What they would like to be able to do is to install a power inverter so that they can actually run equipment from the truck. The other thing is the utility boxes right now aren't lit. This truck will go out at night at times. And the other thing is it's going to be used in conjunction with all the work we're doing with signposts, and they would like to be able to take that signpost pounder and mount it to that lumber.
It's still under budget, right?
Yes.
Move that we approve change order number 1 in the amount of $7,280.
Second.
Discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Payroll and bills.
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed the payroll and bills. There were no obvious issues on the pay report. The AP includes routine operational and capital payments. Several are larger for Rolling Hills, storm sewer work, and Shady Lane slip lining. On a positive note, a small benefit, the price for glass recycling pickups has been reduced due to an agreement between Michael Brothers and PRC. The credit card statement has charges of $17,000. Mr. Lauer might respond to those if you have any questions. If not, I'll make a motion to approve the checks as presented.
Second.
Other discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Correspondence.
In your docket is a email from Don, I'm going to mess his name up, Zensky, yeah, from Pennsylvania American Water. It discusses the possibility of Pennsylvania American Water acquiring the assets of the Peters Township Sanitary Authority.
No, thanks.
I personally don't think that this is a good idea for Peters Township. It's up to you whether or not you want me to schedule a meeting with them.
I would not be in favor of it.
No.
You know, the benefit of getting a lump sum of money sounds intriguing, but the back end effect on the ratepayers is usually, from other ones we've seen, is not positive.
Yes, I would agree.
So do we need a motion to?
Just tell me we want $200 million instead.
Yeah.
You know what,
He says, yeah.
If that's a consensus of council, I can relate that to.
Okay.
Thank you.
No interest. Reports. Anybody have a report they'd like to discuss here?
I wanted to ask on engineering, Mr. Zemaitis, Rolling Hills, the East McMurray change moon-shaped portion is getting close to being ready to pave. Will that have the same elevation as the existing East McMurray? Right now it looks lower, but I know that they're not done yet.
It will be slightly lower. It's not going to be the same elevation.
Okay. And I had one other question, and perhaps you can answer this at a different meeting. We reduced the hours of operation for the library, and I wondered whether that had any major impact on their operating expenses as far as staffing or anything like that.
Well, in fact, I was just talking to Sue Miller today about this. What it has done is reduce the amount of hours that we're paying out to the part-time employees, particularly the ones that work at the circulation desk. So, yeah, it has an impact, but it's not. Yeah, it's somewhat limited.
One last comment. I'd just like to thank Ryan. I think the financial reports are very comprehensive, and I appreciate that he's very thorough in explaining and keeping us up to date.
Okay.
I think we should also point out that in the engineering section, that Mr. Zemaitis should be commended on a creative solution to a difficult problem on the slip lining project. I mean, that took forever, but we finally got it right, hopefully. And I would also point out that and commend Ms. Harmel and the recreation staff because even though COVID, they're still offering a lot of programs. I think they might even actually offer more now than they did before. I think we should note those two things, even though nobody wants to talk.
Well, and I gotta
Well
say, the
said.
thing with Michelle is, just as you gave her a challenge when we opened up the amphitheater, you know, the same was true when we expanded the staff with one additional programming person, and Michelle takes advantage of that to its fullest extent, and that's why you see that kind of programming coming out of there, despite the fact that it's kind of challenging time to do programming, so.
Okay.
Well said, Frank.
Miscellaneous?
Mr. Chairman, I had asked Mr. Lauer if he would make a few comments about some things. Just tell the community what we're doing about Halloween, maybe remind people about the census.
In terms of Halloween in Peters Township, as we discussed at the last meeting, we're going to do Halloween as we always do Halloween. It'll be celebrated on October 31st, which is a Saturday this year. If families are interested in participating in that, they should go to those homes that have their front doors illuminated. If families choose not to participate in this, they should just leave their lights closed. And I would hope that everyone would respect people's decisions with regard to that. The time is coming to a close for the census. We have once again reached out to everyone in the community and encouraged them to respond. The reality is money not only from the federal government but money from the state is dependent upon an accurate count. And so it is in our interest that everyone participate in the census. And it's a rather quick and painless experience this year, so I would encourage anybody who hasn't to do so.
Do you get a report as to percentage?
I do not have the most recent report on the census. You know what, I will make an effort to make sure that we get that for the next meeting. My understanding is the count is to be extended now through the month of October.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I understood.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Paul,
Extended, and last I saw this, I forget whether it was the county or this region, I forget, but we were above the
We have
national rates. It's,
Paul, the Halloween incident will not include the haunted trail this year.
We will not have the haunted trail this year for people, and so and then there's a great deal of disappointment inside the Park and Rec Department and all the people who always volunteer for that, because they take great pride in that. The one thing that we are doing as an alternative for people looking for a safe way to do trick-or-treating is we have the Trunk and Treat program that's being offered by the Parks and Rec Department. It's being done in a way that's a little bit different, so that the amount of contact between people handing out candy and people receiving candy is limited. That is in early October.
Is it the 17th?
Yeah, I think it's that Saturday that's the 17th.
Aren't they looking for people to sign up for time?
Yes.
Yes.
They have a whole crew that have done it in the past, and they're looking for people who might be interested. So.
Mr. Chairman, I had one other question for Mr. Lauer under miscellaneous. This was kind of precipitated by the Lutz plan and some of the issues and the question about where the ownership is. A while back, we talked, Mr. Lauer mentioned that we've had an issue with developers not putting survey pins in at plans. And at the prior meeting, I signed one of the checks for Gateway that a lot of their money was coming out of escrow payments for survey pins to be placed in plans that have been done for decades. Well, I happened to come across another plan where there's an open issue, and I asked Mr. Zook about it. A sidewalk hadn't been completed in a plan, a development that we've accepted. My question to Mr. Lauer is, I guess I was oblivious to the idea that we're still holding escrow money and things aren't done after we accept a plan. How often and why do we do that?
Well, first, let me say that we have resolved this issue of monuments. And if council will recollect, when we did the fee ordinance, one of the things that Ed and I suggested to council and was implemented in that ordinance, we no longer take escrow payments for monuments. It has for
as long as I can remember, been a problem getting people to come back and install those after homes were built. So we now take a fee. And what we intend to do is once a year, where it's appropriate, to use that fee to go install those monuments on our own. And so that will no longer be an issue. I will tell you, we struggle with, because there's little leverage available to us in getting plans complete. And it's just not sidewalks. It's getting storm ponds turned over to us. It's getting developers to file the appropriate paperwork to terminate their E&S plans. It's getting roads paved. And we're not alone in this. This is a common problem in the state of Pennsylvania in developing communities. And the best that we have is to use whatever leverage we can to get them done. So and some of that, quite frankly, we reach a little bit beyond where we have authority in, but we have threatened people with not issuing building permits. We have threatened people with not approving additional plans. But none of that is provided for in the municipality's planning code. And so it's a struggle. It's a struggle.
Well, I guess I'm wondering, and maybe all of you know, I mean, Mr. Lewis, you've been on council for years. Why do we accept a plan which then obligates us to manage the roads if the developer hasn't done it? Isn't that leverage?
The biggest reason is, I guess, to get the revenue tax from the state.
The fuel fund?
Well, that and there's residents living on the road.
streets.
Well, I
yeah.
We don't
understand
want to
that.
take the risk of not being able to maintain the road. So our standard operating procedure is, once the road is installed, inspected, we put like an initial 1-inch wearing course on. We accept the roadways as long as the developer has to come and offer it for acceptance first, then we accept the roadways. And it's just usually, we're still holding in escrow that amount of money for the final wearing course. And that's where it drags on sometimes. It could take years for that final wearing course till all the homes are built. It's just
That's
trying to
usually
follow
the
developers along to get that installed. And, so we have the funds available to do it. But like Paul said, just to try to have some type of inducement for the developer to get that wearing course installed is tough.
And we're always thrown by this because I got to think if I was a developer, I'd want to get out from underneath the liability of it. But they don't see it that way, and it's a struggle.
Well, and I guess my concern is, obviously, the roads are one major issue, and I agree with you. I don't want to strand residents where they're not getting the roads taken care of. But in cases, it's almost like in some of these, is it too much for them to go back? Is it too little for them to go back and finish something because, we can write that money off? And is it a liability for us to be holding money because nothing's happening?
Well, no, it's the one good thing that we do is that all of those public improvements are bonded. So if push came to shove, the money's there to go and do that work. I'd actually had a conversation with Mark about, at some point in time just throwing up our hands and going to do it. And what Mark's correct about is we are so busy in the engineering department, the last thing we need to be is the contractor for developers. So I think we need to continue to push developers to do what they're supposed to do. And more often than not, we get there in the end, but it takes a while. It's not easy.
Do you have a master list of, what plans are still open and how much money we're holding?
Yep.
And how long we've been holding it?
Oh, yeah, and we review that on a regular basis.
So, off the top of your head, I'm not going to hold you to it, but
I can't even give you
what's the longest, the oldest one that we're sitting on?
I couldn't tell you that. I couldn't tell you that off the top of my head. But I can tell you that at the next meeting.
Well, the survey markers were
The
granted.
Aside from the
survey markers. The survey markers.
Okay, well, I'm just saying.
Those things, some of those can be back God knows how long. But that will never be a problem again. In fact, the way it was being done, it resulted in not all the markers ever being put in because we weren't going to spend our money to put markers in that somebody else should have done. That's all been resolved. We've got a good solution to this, and that won't be a problem, but that still doesn't get to these other things. And I'll tell you what, we'll give you a report at the next meeting.
Is it possible for us to use that money in part to hire somebody to manage and oversee that rather than us do it?
No, it's what the amount is set by the state. It's a percentage over top of what the engineer's estimate is for the work, and it's only for that purpose. It is for the guarantee that gets installed.
But after a number of years, the cost has to be more than what we.
Oh, we have the opportunity to go back and require more money be posted.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
In my monthly report, there is a list of plans out there that are pending township acceptance every month.
Would that be the?
We don't have the dollar amounts of what we're holding.
Okay.
We could add to that.
But I mean, that would be fairly, I mean, I read those, so, I mean, I know that there's a few.
There's a list of 7, just off the top of my head, there's 9+ plans we still have to accept.
Oh, okay.
But it would be interesting to know how much money
I think it's they're all
We-
whether
probably
it's,
based on
whether it's for
completion.
something more
Yeah, some of
than
those,
Most of it's
road.
done.
I think what we can tell you is
some of those plans are built out over
we can tell you
years, and
what we're
The
holding
guy's got,
and what we're holding
you
it
know,
for.
Okay.
50 feet of road to complete or something. I mean, yeah. Okay, anything else miscellaneous? Okay, any agenda items for next month, next meeting?
I had 2 questions for that, and it doesn't have to be next meeting, whatever's comfortable. Before the end of the year, I'd like to know a little bit about how the safety committee is doing and talk about some training and know a little bit about what the employees have been getting. Every month I send you some notices from the Department of Labor about free seminars, but I don't know what else is
You
happening.
know, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to provide a report to council on that.
And one other thing, we talked briefly at the workshop about minimum maintenance roads and private roads. Would there, we need to resolve how we handle those. Would we ever bring that forward to a public hearing or come up with
If
some
we
plan?
move ahead with those, we're going to have to, council's going to have to help with that. I personally don't think in terms of the budget, it's going to change the amount of money that we budget for road maintenance. This may cause Mark to groan. But I think before we move ahead with next year's road improvement program, we want to talk to council to find out, you know, are we willing to include as part of that program upgrading minimum maintenance roads or putting in turnarounds?
Well, I think we need to develop a procedure. And I'm not sure that the procedure would be exactly the same for each road, depending on, because some of them are different. They have different challenges. So that was one of the things. So I don't know whether that should be an agenda item or a separate
I think that we're going to
workshop.
see it next year as part of the road consideration of the road pavement.
Thank you.
What about,
Thank you.
what's the status of the Courtney agreement to access this property?
I have not had an opportunity to work on that yet.
Well, I mean, is he still continuing to not provide?
Oh, no, we have met with him. We have designated spots that will be allowed to be used. We have obtained signage that designates those spaces.
Okay.
But I will get you that agreement.
Okay.
Okay, you wanted to have a brief executive session. Okay, we have a brief executive session. Other than that, yep.
Yeah, well, this is something that came up tonight.
Yeah, it just came up tonight. We're adjourned.